So we all saw Connor Bedard go first overall to the Chicago Blackhawks last night in the NHL entry draft. He looked very happy and Gary Bettman looked even happier. So that brings me here. Me and Gary Bettman had a talk and he has allowed me to rebuild the Chicago Blackhawks as their new GM, but I have a twist. Cheating. Yes, just like the Russians did in the Olympics and how Chicago did in the NHL draft lottery this year, Gary Bettman has allowed me to add one player every single season until I win a Stanley Cup with Chicago. That means every season that we do not win a Stanley Cup, I can add one player, any player in the entire game, to the Chicago Blackhawks until we win a Stanley Cup, because that is in the script. So in year number 1, we have Connor Bedard starting on our first line at an 85 overall. Taylor Hall is also an 85. We still have Jonathan Toews, even though in real life they're not going to bring him back. And we also picked up Corey Perry. Corey Perry was literally traded like 20 minutes before I started recording. We also got Nick Foligno in the same deal as Taylor Hall. And we all know the Chicago Blackhawks rosters are not very good. So it's definitely going to take some years until we actually be a contender in the NHL. I mean, for God's sake, we have Seth Jones as our best defenseman at an 86 overall. So let's go ahead and simulate the season. And every single season that I do not win the Stanley Cup, obviously I'm going to be adding one player to Chicago. At the end of our first season, we are going to finish with a horrible record of 31, 42, and 9, finishing dead last in the Central. I mean, it's not that bad looking at it. Arizona was pretty bad as well. I mean, 31 wins, I guess it's not terrible, but still, we definitely expected to be at the bottom of the standings. The Edmonton Oilers would end up finishing first in the NHL, going 47, 22, and 13, and Chicago was the worst team in the entire NHL. Somehow, Seth Jones is actually going to lead our team in points. He had 10 goals, 63 assists for 73 points in 78 games, followed by Taylor Hall, 69. Connor Bedard only had 66, but he did have 31 goals. Jonathan Toews had 55. He's a minus 20. Taylor Raddysh, 49. Tyler Johnson had 42. He was a minus 38. Bro, I remember when this guy was on Tampa Bay and he was a monster. He had a 50-point season. He had a 72-point season one year, and he's fallen all the way to a minus 39 and only 42 points. Bedsy would lead our team in goals with 31, followed by Taylor Hall's 27, Jonathan Toews at 24, Taylor Raddysh at 23, and Peter Mrazek was an utter mess the entire season. Connor McDavid is going to lead the entire NHL in points with 108, followed by Austin Matthews 105, Nylander had 101, Nathan MacKinnon had 99, Mitch Marner 99, shout out Wayne Gretzky, Braden Point had 98, Malkin had 94, Tkachuk 94. For goals, Patrick Laine is going to have the most goals in the NHL with 58, followed by Austin Matthews 57, Alex Ovechkin at 55, Nathan MacKinnon 47, Leon Draisaitl 44. Matthias Maselli is actually going to have the most points by a rookie with 81. He also had 25 goals on Arizona, followed by Connor Bedard's 31 goals and 66 points. And the New Jersey Devils are going to go on to win the Stanley Cup as they sweep Winnipeg in the Stanley Cup final. Austin Matthews is going to take home the Ted Lindsay and the Hart Trophy, while Patrick Laine is going to take home the Maurice Richard, and Connor McDavid the Art Ross. Adam Fox would take home the Norris, Jack Hughes would take home the Conn Smythe, and Elias Lindholm is going to take home the Selke. So the first player that we're going to be adding to the Chicago Blackhawks is Andrei Vasilevsky at a 94 overall, the best goalie in the game. Now we can add another superstar to pair with Connor Bedard, or we can add a defenseman or something like that. But we have our goalies set, locked up. Vasi's our number 1 goalie, the best goalie in the game. So in the second season, Chicago is going to slightly improve, going 36, 41, and 5, finishing 7th in the Central above Arizona. I mean, finishing above Arizona isn't exactly an accomplishment. They're not very good. The Boston Bruins would end up finishing first in the NHL, going 54, 22, and 6. The Vegas Golden Knights were actually the worst team in the NHL, going 31, 46, and 5. Connor Bedard is going to lead our team in points with 79. He also had 45 goals, followed by Taylor Hall, 62. Jonathan Toews at 54, a minus 24. Corey Perry had 49. Tyler Johnson at 47. Taylor Raddysh, 44. For goals, Bedsy obviously had the most at 45. The next closest was Tyler Johnson with 24, followed by Corey Perry's 22, Taylor Hall at 22, and Lucas Reichel had 15. Vasi would have a pretty rough season, and that is to be expected, considering this roster is absolutely terrible. But don't you worry, he will be useful in a couple seasons when we're actually contenders in the NHL. The GOAT, Nathan MacKinnon, is going to lead the entire NHL in points with 106, followed by Tage Thompson, 102. Steven Stamkos had 100. Nikita Kucherov had 99. Shadow Wayner. Ovi had 96. He also had 42 92 goals. It's kind of low for Ovi. Matthews had 95, Crosby 93, Leon Draisaitl 93, and Braden Point 91. McKinnon will have the most goals in the NHL as well with 56. Matthews was off by 3. He had 53. Kucherov at 49, Patrick Kane 48, and Connor Bedard was tied with Steven Stamkos at 45. And the New York Islanders are going to go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Minnesota in 6 games in the Stanley Cup final. Matthew Barzal is only going to have 5 goals with 26 assists for 31 points in 24 playoff games. Nathan McKinnon is the greatest player of all time. Fox would take home the Norris. Braden Point would take home the Lady Byng. Matthew Barzal took home the Conn Smythe. Georgiev is actually going to take home the Vezina. And Alexander Barkov is going to win the Selke. So the next player that I'm going to be adding to Chicago is Leon Draisaitl at a 95 overall. He's actually going to be playing center while Connor Bedard's going to be on the wing at a 92 overall. Leon is obviously a 95 and Taylor Hall is an 85. Leon and Hall actually used to play on the Oilers back when Hall was still there, so they have some chemistry there. I also think Leon fits very well with Bedard and his play style. So now we have one of the better first lines in the NHL, and Chicago is going to sneak into the playoffs with a 41, 32, and 9 record. Florida would finish first in the NHL with a 56, 20, and 6 record, followed by Colorado, Carolina, and Toronto. Chicago was the 15th best team in the NHL. We actually finished below Tampa Bay, but they actually missed the playoffs because the Atlantic is actually that competitive. Leon Draisaitl is going to lead our team in goals with 52 and points with 107, followed by Bedard's 94. Seth Jones had 64, only 9 goals. Taylor Hall had 55, Jonathan Toews 55, Taylor Radish 49, Corey Perry 47. After Leon Draisaitl for goals, it was Connor Bedard at 48, Taylor Radish at 24, Taylor Hall at 18, Lucas Reichel 18. Oh my god, we did not score a lot of goals. Vasi would end up going 35, 28, and 8. He had 4 shutouts, a 900 save percentage, and a 319 goals against average. Very mediocre stats for the best goalie in the game. Leon Draisaitl will actually lead the entire NHL in points with 107, followed by Nathan McKinnon's 102, Mikko Rantanen 99, Sidney Crosby 98, Kaprizov at 96, Cooch 95. For goals, Dry had the most at 52, followed by Matthews 51, Marchand had 50, Ovi had 50, Connor Bedard had 48, Nathan McKinnon had 46, and Connor McDavid had 46. And it looks like we just got our death sentence as we're facing the Colorado Avalanche in round number 1. Okay, so this sums up EA Sports literally perfectly. We are going to beat Colorado in round number 1 in 7 games. I don't know how we did it, but we did do it. And then we are going to lose to Winnipeg in the second round in 6 games. And Carolina is going to go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Vegas in the Stanley Cup final in 7 games. The playoff performer, that is Leon Draisaitl, had 3 goals, 12 assists for 15 points in 13 playoff games. Bedsy, oh my god, Bedard had 12 goals and 1 assist for 13 points in 13 playoff games. For his first ever playoff run, that is absolutely insane. Nathan McKinnon is going to take home the Ted Lindsay and the Hart Trophy, while Leon Draisaitl is going to take home the Maurice Richard and the Art Ross. Cale Makar would take home the Norris. Connor Bedard would take home the Lady Byng. Marty Necas is going to take home the Conn Smythe. Vanacek would win the Vezina. And Sidney Crosby is going to take home the Selke. The next player that I will be adding to Chicago is Adam Fox at a 92 overall. He's our number 1 D-man. We definitely needed to address that considering we had Seth Jones as our number 1 D-man. So we definitely need to start filling that out. Adam Fox is definitely a first grade choice. He's a 92 overall, a top 3 defenseman in the entire game. Chicago is going to end up finishing second in the Central with a 50, 24, and 8 record. And we are going to finish third in the entire NHL, only behind Colorado and Carolina. Okay, well, Leon Draisaitl is the best player in the world. He had 56 goals and 133 points playing with Connor Bedard, who had 107 points and 54 goals. I mean, this got to be the best duo in the entire NHL. Adam Fox would have 8 goals but 81 assists for 89 points. Taylor Hall would have 81, Tyler Johnson 52, Seth Jones 51. For goals, we already know it was Leon and Connor, followed by Taylor Hall's 28, Tyler Johnson at 25, Taylor Radish 22. Vasi would go 42, 15, and 5, having 3 shutouts, a 913 save percentage, and a 261 goals against average. Leon is obviously going to lead the NHL in points with 133, followed by Mikko Rantanen's 116. Nathan McKinnon had 112, Connor Bedard 107, Matthews 105, Ovi had 64 goals and 102 points. For goals, Ovi had the most at 64, followed by Matthews 59, Draisaitl 56, Kane 55, Connor Bedard had 54, McKinnon 53, Cooch 50, and Brad Marchand. And we are going to be playing the Minnesota Wild in round number 1. And Chicago's going to get absolutely dominated, like how your stepdad dominates you when you don't do the dishes and your mother gets mad. mad and oh my god, where am I going with this? Anyways, we would end up getting swept by Minnesota in the very first round, and the Florida Panthers would go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Minnesota in the Stanley Cup Finals in 7 games. Leon Draisaitl is going to take home the Ted Lindsay, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy, while Ovi's going to take home the Maurice Richard. John Carlson is actually going to take home the Norris. Matthew Tkachuk is going to take home the Conn Smythe. Freddie Anderson is going to win the Vezina, and Anze Kopitar is going to take home the Selke. Now the next player that I will be adding to Chicago is your girlfriend's favorite player, Jack Hughes, at a 90 overall. He's going to be on the second line with Jonathan Toews at an 84 and Taylor Radish 81. I mean, I figured we had a very good first line, but we don't have a second line center, which every team basically needs if you're going to win the Stanley Cup. So we have Jack Hughes at a 90, Leon Draisaitl at a 95, Connor Bedard's a 94, and Taylor Hall's an 85. We still have Adam Fox, who is a 92 overall, and Andrei Vasilevsky, who is a 94. And just like that, Chicago finishes first in the Central with a 53, 22, and 7 record. We would also finish first in the entire NHL in front of the Florida Panthers, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So there you go. In less than 5 seasons, we went from the worst team in the NHL to the best team in the NHL. Thank you, Gary Bettman. Leon Draisaitl is going to lead our team in points yet again with 101, followed by Bedard's 95, Jack Hughes at 91, Adam Fox 88, Taylor Hall 64, Jonathan Toews at 58, Tyler Johnson 53. For goals, Bedard had the most at 50, followed by Taylor Hall's 32. Leon Draisaitl, he only had 32 goals this season. That's a very disappointing year, considering the numbers that he's been putting up the last few seasons with us. Taylor Radish at 30, Jack Hughes 28, Tyler Johnson 26, Corey Perry 19. Andrei Vasilevsky will go 41, 19, and 6. 3 shutouts, a 902 save percentage, and a 305 goals against average. Nathan MacKinnon is actually going to lead the entire NHL in points with 102, followed by Draisaitl's 101. So it looks like a lot of the players didn't put up a lot of points this season, as Dry comes in second place with 101. Ovi had 98, Patrick Laine 96, Johnny Hockey 96, Connor Bedard 95. Nate Dogg is going to have the most goals in the NHL with 56, followed by Kuch's 55. Connor Bedard with 50, Ovi at 48, Patrick Laine 48, and we are going to be playing the St. Louis Blues in round number 1, and somehow we are actually going to lose in 7 games in the very first round of St. Louis. It must have been the gunshots in St. Louis that distracted us, and the Carolina Hurricanes are going to go on to win the Stanley Cup as they beat Calgary in the Stanley Cup Finals in 7 games. Svechnikov is going to have the most points with 29 in the playoffs. He also had 15 goals, a very good playoff run by him. Nathan MacKinnon is the greatest player of all time. Rasmus Dahlin would take home the Norris. Adam Fox is going to take home the Lady Byng. Svechnikov will take home the Conn Smythe. Carter Hart is going to win the Vezina, and Nico Hischier is going to win the Selke. And the next player that I'm going to be adding is Rasmus Dahlin at a 91 overall to pair with Adam Fox on the first defensive pair. We could honestly slide him down to the second line if we wanted to, but for now we're going to leave him with Adam Fox. And now we have one of the best first lines in the NHL. Actually, I'm going to put Jack Hughes up there. And we have one of the best first lines in the NHL with a 95 Draisaitl, a 96 Bedard, and a 90 Jack Hughes. And we probably have the best defensive pair, honestly, a 92 Fox and 91 Dahlin. I don't think any team can compete with that. We also have a number 1 goalie, actually the best goalie in the game, a 94 Andrei Vasilevsky. Chicago is actually going to end up finishing with a 51, 28, and 3 record, good enough for 3rd in the Central behind Minnesota and Colorado. I mean, I guess the Central was very strong this season, 3 50-win teams. Colorado is going to end up finishing 1st in the NHL, then the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Minnesota Wild, and the Chicago Blackhawks. Leon Draisaitl is going to lead our team in points with 100. Actually, he was tied with Jack Hughes. They would each have 100 points, followed by Adam Fox, 97, also had 15 goals. Connor Bedard had 52 goals, but only 95 points. Still a pretty good year from him. Rasmus Dahlin had 69, nice. Taylor Hall had 65. Jonathan Toews, 61. Jonathan Toews, 61 points is like his best in a couple seasons. I mean, he had 81 back in 2019, 60 the year after. Yeah, he's kind of fell off from there. Bedsy is going to lead our team in goals with 52, followed by Leon Draisaitl's 45. Taylor Hall had 36. Taylor Radish at 27, and Jack Hughes at 27. Vasi is going to end up going 41, 22, and 2, having 1 shutout, a 908 save percentage, and a 268 goals against average. The GOAT, Nathan MacKinnon, is going to have the most points in the NHL. Yet again, he had 133, followed by Mikko Rantanen's 113. McDavid had 109. Ovi, 108. Landy had 107. Barkov would have 101. Draisaitl, the Nuge, had another 100-point season. For goals, goals, Ovi had the most at 62, followed by McKinnon 61. Marchand would put up 57 goals. McDavid would have 54, Bedard 52, Matthews 50, and Evgeny Malkin 48. And yet again, we are going to be playing the Minnesota Wild in round number 1. And just like that, 6 years into the simulation, and we are finally in the Stanley Cup final. We are playing against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Can we take home our first Stanley Cup since 2015 and get Bedard his first Stanley Cup of his career? And sadly, we are not going to lift the Stanley Cup, as the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to beat us in 6 games in the Stanley Cup final. Jack Hughes is going to go absolutely off in the playoffs. 7 goals, 32 assists for 39 points in 24 playoff games, followed by Leon Draisaitl, who had 18 goals and 29 points. Adam Fox at 28. Connor Bedard would have 14 goals and 26 points. So I mean, our big guys stepped up big time in the playoffs. The Pittsburgh Penguins were just a better team than us, I guess. Vasi would go 14 and 8, a 900 save percentage, and a 3 goals against average. Not the greatest. So I guess you could say Vasi didn't show up in the Stanley Cup finals or in the playoffs at all. But overall, I'm very happy with this season. I mean, we came so close, and just 6 years ago, we were the worst team in the NHL. McKinnon is going to take home the Ted Lindsay, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy, while Ovi's going to take home the Maurice Richard. Adam Fox would take home the Norris. Evgeny Malkin is going to take home another Conn Smythe. Georgiev with another Vezina, and Alexander Barkov is going to take home the Selke. Now, the next player that I'm going to be adding to Chicago is Sidney Crosby at a 93 overall. We will definitely need his defense, his big old D. Pause. But he's going to be on the second line. We definitely need a second line center. We had Jack Hughes there, but I moved him up on the first line so we can stack our first line. And now we have Crosby on the second line at a 93. His leadership and his D are definitely going to help us out. Taylor Hall's an 85, Draisaitl's a 95, Bedsy is a 96, and Hughes is a 91. We still have Dahlin and Fox at a 91 and 92 as our top line D pair. And of course, we know we have Andrei Vasilevsky in the net at a 94 overall. Chicago is going to finish the season first in the Central with 53 wins, 20 losses, and 9 overtime losses. And we were the second best team in the NHL behind the Boston Bruins, who went 60, 17, and 5. Leon Draisaitl is going to lead our team in points yet again, this time with 98, followed by Bedard's 92. Crosby had 89, Jack Hughes at 86, Adam Fox at 85. Jonathan Toews and Rasmus Dahlin had 57 apiece, and it kind of falls off from there. Bedsy would lead our team in goals with 51, followed by Draisaitl's 35, Jack Hughes at 33, Crosby 28, Corey Perry had 23, Jonathan Toews 23, Hall 20. Vasi would end up going 42, 17, and 7. He had no shutouts, a 909 save percentage, and a 267 goals against average. Alexander Barkov is going to lead the entire NHL in points with 101, followed by Leon Draisaitl's 98, Ovi had 97, McKinnon 95, Pasta 94, Johnny Hockey 93, Bedsy, obviously we know he had 92. For goals, Ovi's just going to blow it away. Actually, no, he was tied with Matthews. Matthews and Ovi each had 59 apiece, followed by Pasta's 51, Bedard had 51, McKinnon 45, and Marchand 44. And Chicago is going to be playing the Nashville Predators in round number 1. And just like that, we are back in the Stanley Cup final, this time against the Washington Capitals. Now, we had a taste last year of Stanley Cup final hockey. Now, this season, can we please bring the cup back to Chicago and win Connor Bedard his first Stanley Cup of his career? And just like that, after 6 seasons of rebuilding with Chicago, they are back on the top of the NHL world, winning their first Stanley Cup since 2015. Connor Bedard picks up his first Stanley Cup of his career. Leon Draisaitl is our Conn Smythe winner. It said he had 9 goals, 14 points, but we all know that's wrong. The big German Gretzky, Leon Draisaitl. We would absolutely dominate the Capitals, sweeping them in the Stanley Cup finals. And here comes Captain Connor Bedard, Bedsy baby, a little toe drag release, coming to lift the Stanley Cup for the first time in his career, bringing Chicago back to the promised land. Connor Bedard, you are in fact him. And he is going to pass it off to basically our best player throughout the simulation. Since Draisaitl came to our team got a lot better, making the playoffs, and he led our team in points pretty much every season. So he definitely deserves this, his first Stanley Cup of his career. Next, he's going to give it to Sidney Crosby. Crosby would bring his leadership to Chicago in his very first season. Actually, no, was he here last season? No, this was his very first season at Chicago. And for one last time, Crosby is going to give the Stanley Cup to Jonathan Toews. He's lifted 3 Stanley Cups for Chicago. Now, this is his 4th and most likely his last. Realistically, he wouldn't still be here 6 years later, but I left him on Chicago because he's an absolute icon for the Blackhawks. And just like that, the Chicago Blackhawks are back to being Stanley Cup champions and a powerhouse in the NHL, all because of Connor Bedard, and that does not look like Leon Draisaitl. Oh, that's Adam Fox. For the playoffs, Leon would have 10 goals and 30 points in 24 playoff games. The Conn Smythe was definitely well-deserved. Jack Hughes would have 29 points and 11 goals. Connor Bedard would have 16 goals and 27 points for the playoffs. A very good playoff run by Bedsy. Adam Fox at 24, Dahlin 24, Taves at 22. Jonathan Taves outscored Sidney Crosby. Vassy's numbers were okay. He had 2 shutouts, a 906 save percentage, and a 280 goals against average. Nothing special, but not bad at all. Alexander Barkov is going to take home the Ted Lindsay, the Art Ross, and the Hart Trophy, while Ovi's going to take home the Maurice Richard. Adam Fox with another Norris. Draisaitl obviously took home the Conn Smythe. Bobrovsky is going to win the Vezina, and Bergeron is going to take home that Selke. And that is going to do it for this video, boys. In 6 years, we brought the Blackhawks back to being a powerhouse in the NHL with a little help from the commissioner. Regardless, we are yet again Stanley Cup champions. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, don't be silly. Wrap your willy.